thumbs up to vote them up. If in case the flight ban from India to Canada extends, could you advise the best alternative to coming to Canada through a third country? That's a great question. I think your travel agents are probably, or your own research online is probably going to be able to do as much as I can in terms of specific recommendations. We do know from our colleagues at Vancouver International Airport that they are seeing visitors who have started their travel in India and Pakistan, who are arriving in Vancouver. They're seeing people coming through Germany, coming through Mexico, a number of different places. And of course, the challenge one of the rate limiting factors is that the COVID PCR test that Canada requires you to take before arrival does have to be taken within 72 hours before the flight that will land in Canada takes off. So let's imagine you're flying into, I don't know, Mexico City, and then you probably have been traveling long enough that you need to get your PCR test probably in Mexico City. Is there a facility there? Do you have the right visa to be able to be in Mexico, etc.? So that's one of the main factors to consider for going through a third country. Are you allowed to be there? And how about the timing of your COVID test? Okay, Abdullah.
Thank you, Michelle. And I will also link my answer to this next question to Michelle's answer. What if we are not able to travel in September? Flights from Pakistan and Canada require stay over in Turkey, Doha, or United Arab Emirates. All these airports do not have an in-transit COVID testing facility. Any workaround? Well, again, my simple answer is if this might impact your eligibility to enter Canada, if you won't be able to have a valid PCR COVID-19 test, if it's possible to avoid those transit cities, I mean, that would be my simple answer. Unfortunately, it's hard to map or suggest a route for a certain flight and which places or cities you might transit in safely in terms of whether a COVID-19 test will be available there or not. One of the things, as I mentioned earlier, that you can check before purchasing any flight ticket, check how long the flight is, where you will be transiting, and any preparations you need to do before buying this ticket. I myself, I was trying to buy a ticket a few days ago, and if you don't get any message in writing, call the airlines and see what you need to prepare, what you need to do, if there is an alternative route that you can take to safely arrive to Canada. But again, it's a bit difficult to suggest what alternatives you might have, but we're confident that you will find alternative flights through which you can come and arrive to Canada.
Mm-hmm. Thank you. Great. So the next question is, what if we're not able to travel in September for the new session and we have applied for the in-person classes? Then how will the classes be conducted for them? So if you don't know yet that you can travel in September, we would strongly encourage you to consider registering for classes that will be online wholly, including the exams and midterms, etc. If you have registered for an in-person class and you're not able to attend in person, you won't be able to attend the class, is the basic assumption that we're making at this time. So that they're working hard so that there can be specific sections of classes that would be delivered exclusively online, because we know that there are some students who might not be able to attend, and we very much want students to have a great experience in terms of taking the classes that they want and need. But if you register for an in-person class, you'll be expected to show up in person.
Thank you, Michelle. Is there a way parents can get visa if they wish to accompany as students? Again, this is a very good question. We're talking about two things here. We have travel restrictions, and I'm assuming when you say parents, they will come and join you as visitors. And the visitors right now are not allowed to come to Canada unless they're coming for essential purpose. Immigration has provided certain guidelines for when parents can accompany minor students. So there is an age limit, and there is another section where if the students have conditions where need to be accompanied by a parent to help them get settled in Canada if they will be traveling for more than 14 days. In both cases, only one parent can join, not one parent. Another important piece, if you believe that you fall under either of those two sections, we do recommend that you or your parents apply for a written authorization to travel to Canada. So your parents will have an authorization writing that their travel to Canada is essential as visitors, and they can accompany you to come and get settled here in Canada.
Thank you. If I select a course in online mode for now, will I be able to change it to in-person once I'm allowed into Canada? And I've seen questions on the chat about registration. So no one has registered for September classes yet at UBC. Priority registration opens, I think, June 23rd and then goes through the middle of July. And each of you might have a different registration date than the other because of some groups are prioritized, different years have different times that they register. And so so don't worry, you haven't been able to register yet, but we wanted to talk to you about this now so that you can plan very carefully, because as you might know, once registration opens, you will want to be, whatever time, like minute it opens, you'll want to already be at your computer ready with your prioritized list of classes that you would hope to take in specific sections, and your plan A and plan B and plan C, because some classes fill very quickly. So will you be able to change to an in-person section of a course once you arrive, if you arrive in Canada? Not necessarily. We would certainly do our best to make room for you, but if every seat is full with a long waiting list, then it might not be possible to make that switch. That would, at the same time, we've had students in Canada this past year who have talked about the benefits of being on the campus, even if they aren't necessarily in in-person classes. And it's likely you'd be able to get at least one in-person class, or to sit in on the in-person section of some of the classes that you're in.
Thank you, Michelle. The RCC website, and this is the next question, says that they are prioritizing the visa applications from countries with no travel restrictions. What does this mean for our visa timelines? Again, without giving a specific answer to this, when I look at the new policies that put in place to help international students in Canada, what I see is that RCC is trying to finalize study permit applications as soon as possible. And one of the examples I can give is when they issued the temporary policy for study permit applications submitted before May 15th, it was not country specific. So again, it's just that immigration, they're trying to finalize as many as study permit applications in time for students to start their classes in September as soon as possible. And I really hope your study permit application will be approved in time.
Mm-hmm. The next question says, I finished my second year and I have my study permit and my visa and health insurance. Will I face the same restrictions? So you're in a good position if that's your situation. So you would know that you'll be able to travel to Canada before classes start. You will need to still show that you have are enrolled at the university. So print off a new letter of enrollment from your student service center so that you can show that you've registered in classes for the fall in case an officer says, are you actually studying? And then you'll still be subject to the same restrictions as other international students coming in. So if there's still a 3-day hotel stay, or if there's still self-quarantine, depending on vaccination, you'll still be subject to those things.
Thank you, Michelle. I think I answered this question by mistake, but it's okay. I'm happy to jump to the next question. So after my first year at UBC, I came back to India in May 2020. Since it's been over a year, do I need any extra documentation like a new medical examination? Our advice to students that if you have a valid study permit and you have been not required to complete a medical exam by RCC, that you do not need a medical exam at this time. We have been seeing some contradicting messages on the RCC website, but I will pass this to Michelle just to confirm that this is our practice. If you have a valid study permit, you'll be traveling to Canada. You don't need a valid medical exam to travel. Am I correct, Michelle?
It is the case that immigration could require that someone who's been in a designated country for more than 6 months in the last 12 months, when they travel to Canada, might have to do a new immigration medical exam. However, if they don't communicate that to you before you get on the plane, you aren't required to do it before you get on the plane. There's a small chance that an officer, when you arrive, would say, I'd like you to do a new immigration medical when you're inside Canada. We've never heard of students having difficulty at the border because they're a continuing student, but they have come back after a time away and didn't do a new medical exam. And someone did ask a slightly different question. Someone did ask a slightly different question about medical exam, which is that you've been contacted by Immigration Canada and told you need to get an updated medical exam because the one you took for your study permit initially was more than 12 months ago, and you still haven't traveled to Canada. If you get an instruction from an immigration officer, do it. Whatever they require you to do. And so if they're saying you need a new immigration medical, then you'll need a new immigration medical.
Thank you, Michelle. What happens to our deposit that we pay for Jumpstart and housing in the event of not obtaining a visa? That is a great question. UBC has a refund policy in general, whether it's courses, dropping off courses and withdrawing from courses, and there is a timeline to that. The best who can advise on this is enrollment services at UBC. They might look into your situation and then give like a more detailed advice on that. You may also reach out directly to the Jumpstart team or UBC student residents to keep them posted with your plans, whether you'll be able to join or will not be able to join, whether you think you will be joining at a later date, and what options you might have.
Okay. And I know that the Jumpstart deposit or Jumpstart fee is refundable if you don't attend. And the housing refund will depend on how soon before your arrival you cancel. Yeah. So can we select online courses for the first semester and then in-person courses for the remaining semesters? Or are there set in-person courses semester-wise? That's a great question. UBC has a very small number of year-long courses that start in September and end in April. Very few of those. So if you were outside of Canada and taking one of those courses, then you'd want to register for that online for that full year. Otherwise, most UBC classes only last 4 months, one semester, from September to December, and then from January to April. So you could sign up for, register for online courses in first semester, and then in-person courses for the remaining semester. That's certainly a reasonable option for you to do.
What is TRV? Could you please elaborate? So TRV is your ticket to the theater, as Michelle mentioned. So a TRV is the counterfoil stamp on your passport that would warrant your entry to Canada, whether as a visitor, worker, or a student. In your case, if you apply for a study permit from outside Canada, and let's assume that you are a new incoming student, you will get a study permit approval letter. And if you're coming from visa required country, immigration would request your passport, and they would stamp your passport with this font, a counterfoil TRV. A TRV is a document that you need to enter Canada. A study permit, which would be issued for new students upon their entry to Canada, is what gives you status in Canada, is the hat you wear as a student as long as you are in Canada. A TRV is what you need to enter Canada. For returning students who are coming from visa-exempt countries, let's assume a student was here in Canada, they have a valid study permit that doesn't match the expiry date of their TRV. So they're outside Canada, they have a study permit that is valid until 2023, but they don't have a valid TRV. In that case, they would need to apply for this ticket, the counterfoil, to immigration outside Canada. Once they get the TRV, they can come back as a student. So again, it's a counterfoil stamp in your passport that allows you to come back or travel to Canada as a student.
Yes. Can the 14-day quarantine period be completed at a shared residence? So normally, it will depend. And so, as Bella said, if you look at the BC, for British Columbia, Ministry of Health website, or BC government COVID quarantine, you will find a number of websites with a lot of details about what you can and can't do. So, for example, if everyone in your shared residence were also in the same 14-day quarantine period, then yes, definitely you can do that, and none of you would be leaving the room, and you would all be there together. But if you're the only one self-isolating or quarantining, then you would have to follow very strict protocols that everyone would have to agree to, like cleaning the kitchen or bathroom every time you've been in it, that kind of thing. And if it's UBC residents, that won't be an option. But UBC does have self-quarantine rooms specifically set aside. And if you reserve them early enough, you might be able to self-quarantine there. If the UBC self-quarantine rooms are full for the dates you need, UBC does have arrangement with many local hotels for a reduced rate for you to be able to self-quarantine there.
Yes, and I will add to that, if you look at the Ministry of Health website, they have some guidelines for family traveling together. So the concept household traveling together, self-isolating together, or even the mandatory mandatory hotel stay. They have some instructions to that. If you will not be traveling with your household, not friends, household, then the assumption is that you are expected to self-isolate on your own. I have an existing housing contract and cannot return to campus. I'm not sure if we missed a question, by the way. what are my options in canceling the contract? So, I mean, my best answer would be to contact UBC if UBC student residents, explore what options you have. As Michelle mentioned, it depends on how soon you contact UBC student residents to let them know about you are no longer interested, for example, in this unit, and they will advise you accordingly.
Thank you. And the UBC housing staff have also worked very hard to put as much information on their website as possible because they know the common questions that students have, and they don't want you to have to wait for an email or to phone them. And so under the housing contract examples, I've been able to find this information myself, and I don't have a contract with residents. And so there is information there about canceling the contract. And Abdallah, I figured out why the questions are moving because people are upvoting them as we speak. So the next question, I'll be an unaccompanied minor during my travel. As such, I am exempt from the 3-day hotel quarantine. That's accurate. Is this compliant with the quarantine plan set by UBC? The quarantine plan is actually set by the federal government of Canada, not by UBC and not by the province of BC. But it is true that if you will be under the age of 18, then coming in, you'll be an unaccompanied minor if no one travels with you, and you don't have to stay in that first 3-day hotel, but you do still need at this moment to do a 14-day quarantine.
I have my visa, but I recently got an email saying that my medical is expiring since I got it done a year ago. Should I get it done? Redone? Of course.
I think you answered this one. I think
Yeah,
this is
it's been answered.
only
Comply with the
Yeah.
requirement from the visa office. I can look into the next one. How does one book a medical exam again without the medical exam request form number after receiving a notification from RCC regarding the medical exam result expiry? Very good question. Generally speaking, you don't need a request from RCC to complete an upfront medical exam. When you contact the doctor that is approved by RCC, the panel physician, what you need to tell them, I need to complete an upfront medical exam. And once you complete this exam, you will get 2-page document. It's called e-medical report. You can take that, use the RCC web form to update your application, for example, or if you received an email from a certain visa office, you can get back to them, respond to that email with a confirmation of the medical exam completion. Another thing that I would like to share with you, if a panel physician says you need a request from RCC to complete a medical exam at this time, one of the things that you might want to explore, of course, elaborate and request the upfront medical exam, but usually you will have more than one panel physician in one place. So try contacting different panel physicians to complete the medical exam. If the first one says, I need a request from RCC, contact another panel physician and see if you can complete an upfront medical exam.
Mm-hmm. And I appreciate in the chat that folks have pointed out it's their understanding. I don't have information about it. It's their understanding that upfront medical or non-required medical exams are not available right now from panel physicians. In that case, I would take the notification from IRCC and present that to the medical office because they, as panel physicians, they are obligated to comply with the High Commission. How and when will we be able to get our biometrics done? Will it create an issue related to our arrival there on time? Yeah, so as we mentioned earlier in the presentation, you will have to give biometrics before your study permit application can be approved. If the places where you can give biometrics are not open yet, or not yet taking appointments, you will have to wait. So, and you can't travel to Canada as a student until your study permit is approved and you get the visa put into your passport. So yes, the biometrics could delay your arrival in Canada.
How and when would be able, we answered that. And again, comment about, I saw like in the chat box, students asking about visa application centers and their when and how will they open. I just want to share with you, sometimes the closure of those centers is also due to domestic instructions by health authorities outside Canada. So not only IRCC, the visa application center is is uh, is not technically like a Canadian entity. They have business with IRCC, but also they're bound by health instructions by domestic authorities outside Canada. Even IRCC sometimes they cannot go with the recommendation against what health authorities in a country they're recommending. I've taken my first dose of AstraZeneca, Covishield in India. Will I have to get my second dose from India, or can I get the same vaccine in Canada? Well, depending on when you will be traveling, I would suggest that you comply and listen to what doctors say in your home country. If they recommend and you can have a second shot, please do that. In terms of what you can do here in BC when you come back, this discussion you would need to have with a doctor or health officials here, depending on the type of vaccine that you have taken outside Canada. For example, if it's not approved, the most important thing, or it's not approved, it's not the same as the ones that are being administered here in Canada. The most important thing for you to keep in mind: bring a record, proof that you've been vaccinated, the type of vaccine and the timing of the vaccine. And let's have this discussion here with like a doctor, the health officials, and they will be able to advise on what your next steps will be.
Mm-hmm. Thank you. And I see in the chat that there's lots of misinformation being shared. So biometrics are not available to be collected in Canada if you're traveling from outside. You must give biometrics outside of Canada at this time. If I do end up having to take all online courses, will the tuition be the same as for the on-campus courses? The tuition will be the same. It's actually more expensive for the university to run online courses. And as we have worked with really world experts in how people best learn, we understand that online courses can be as effective or more effective in terms of student learning outcomes than in-person classes. And the effort for faculty members is more or the same. More teaching assistants are required, more technology, etc. So the tuition actually is the same between the two versions of the class.
Can TOEFL score be used to satisfy the English proficiency criteria and the study permit application instead of IELTS? For study permit applications from outside Canada, the first thing I would encourage you to do is to look at the visa office specific requirements when it comes to language proficiency. Generally speaking, a proof of language or proficiency is not required unless you're applying under the student direct stream. If we're referring to the student direct stream, IELTS is the only test approved, not TOEFL. If we're talking about a study permit under the regular stream, then the last time I looked at the visa office instructions for students applying from India, they say recommended. So as long as you have a proof of language proficiency that has been accepted by the university, you may provide that as a proof of language proficiency for admission. So my answer is you may write a letter of explanation, use that, and generally speaking, IELTS results are not like a mandatory requirement for study permit applications for students applying under the regular stream.
Is an RT-PCR test required again if transit is for 2 hours in London, if the test was already done in India 72 hours prior to travel? It's a great question. So let's imagine that the final flight that actually will arrive in Canada is scheduled to depart at, let's say, 2 p.m. on a particular day. Then we need to go 72 hours prior to that. And sometime in that 72 hours, there must have been someone sticking something awful up your nose, or however they're going to do the test, to collect the sample to test your, to see if you have COVID. So it doesn't matter if you had other flights, doesn't matter when you left home. You just have to think about what time does that final flight that lands in Canada, what time is it scheduled to depart, and a 72-hour window before that to have that test actually done.
I applied for a study permit visa application, medical exam document on 11 May 2021, but my biometrics is remaining. Biometric is closed, please advise. I believe we have discussed this. While waiting for visa application centers to be open, just if you can explore like the other options, online courses, plan B, as we had previously discussed. Again, I do acknowledge that this is a difficult time. I do acknowledge that patiently waiting for a long time without hearing back from the visa application center, or sometimes visa offices outside Canada, is frustrating. This is not an easy situation to be in. We hear you. We hope, and we have seen some progress again with visa application centers starting to take appointments. They're not fully open for drop-ins, but sometimes appointments. It's a good sign. So I would encourage you to keep an eye on the closest visa application center to you and see when you can provide your biometrics. And just in case, if there will be delays with processing your study permit application, please explore other options, including taking online courses in winter term 1.
I applied for the study permit visa application and medical exam.
I think that was just answered.
Oh, sorry. Okay. Can we complete the remaining 11-day quarantine in on-campus residence, or do we need to arrange some other accommodation? So UBC does have limited spaces for on-campus residence quarantine. If you are offered a space in UBC residence for the whole winter term, if you've applied, and it's a single room where you can self-isolate by yourself, then that's another option also. And if you don't have a UBC room for the winter, that's where you can self-isolate already. And if UBC's self-isolation rooms are full for the dates that you need, then UBC Housing has worked with other hotels, private hotels, for a reduced rate for UBC students who need to self-isolate. But of course, you are required to self-isolate, but no one can tell you where you would self-isolate. You can choose that yourself.
If I take a flight to Toronto and then come to Vancouver, will I have to do the COVID testing in Toronto? Based on the instructions that we have from RCC, depending on when you arrive, this is where you have to complete the testing, as well as the 3-night mandatory hotel stay. So, simple answer to that.
All right. What if some of our courses, that changed. If in-person classes begin by September 8th, then will we have to be in Vancouver 17 days before, 14-day period plus 3-day hotel stay? That's a great question. I found this confusing at first. Actually, the 3-day hotel stay is the first 3 days of the 14-day period. So if you stay in the 3-day hotel for 3 days, then you only have 11 more days to do the self-isolation. And I will take a moment to also say, I need to be heading out in about a minute for another presentation that I'm giving with faculty and staff who are looking forward to supporting you as you come to UBC. So I will do a check-in right now and see, Abdullah, are you needing also to wrap up at this time, or do you have a few more minutes that you want to stay?
I can stay for a few more minutes, Michelle, to answer some of the questions. So
okay, sounds good. And to our organizers, I will say thank you so much to UTSAF and PSA for arranging this event, which was clearly very popular. And we appreciate all that you do to support students throughout their time at UBC and to create a really important presence at UBC for Indian and Pakistani communities. We are so fortunate in Vancouver and in Canada to have a very strong presence of Indian and Pakistani immigrants as well as international students that make our country a much better place to live. And so we're really grateful to UTSAF and PSA for all the work that you do. And to all of you who are getting ready to come, I would say, as Abdullah has said earlier, you have what it takes to navigate this situation, and you have what it takes to focus on what you can control and on the decisions that you need to be making, and let those other things that are out of your control just fade into the distance as you focus on what really matters, which is you, your family, staying safe and well.
Thank you so much, Michelle, for taking out time to answering questions. Thank you.
thank you, Michelle. So I understand this session was it was planned to be until 10:30. I'm happy to stay for 10 to 15 minutes more to answer the top questions and see if you have a question that you want to rate to start with. I'll be more than happy to do that. Sorry, Hardika, I can't see the first question here. Okay, let's talk. Okay, okay. Do I need to be in Canada to extend my current study permit? I'm in India and my permit expires in November, but I need to take class in winter term 1. The answer to that is yes. You would need to be in Canada to apply for a study permit extension. If you would be applying from outside Canada, you would need to apply for a new study permit from outside Canada. So one of the options you might have, if you're exempt from the travel restrictions, you may travel to Canada and then apply for a study permit extension from within Canada. Mr. Khalifa explained this earlier, but could you clarify what qualify as a valid reason to return for prior students planning to travel in July or August? So if we are talking about undergraduate students who will be traveling during the summer, they would need to either be enrolled for the summer session, or they are authorized to work while on a scheduled break and they have a valid job offer. Of course, the most straightforward way to is to be registered, but the word that we got from CBSA, Canada Border Services Agency at YVR, that students who are authorized to work during the summer, they have a job offer, their travel to Canada is deemed to be essential. What if some of our courses do not have online option? How do we make it all online courses? I would suggest you take this question to your academic advisor and explore what options for courses you will have in winter term 1. I am a new incoming student. I have already applied for a study permit. Do I need to apply for TRV separately? If you have applied for a study permit from outside Canada a TRB will be issued as part of your study permit application. If take a flight to Toronto and then come to Vancouver, we answered that. If in-person classes begin, we answered that. Can I defer admission in the event I don't get visa in time to attend in person? Also, this is a good question. You may contact your academic advisor to explore your options in terms of deferring your admission to a later date. Allard Law isn't offering courses online. I've completed the steps, but don't know if my application will be approved in time. What are my options in this case? So if you're talking about online courses, if you're joining a program of study that does not offer online courses and you won't be able to arrive in person, one of the options that you may consider is deferring your admission. And I would suggest that you contact, if you're a graduate student, you're a program of study, or if you're an undergraduate student, contact your academic advisor to explore that option. What are the considerations for returning students in second year and above with regards to housing, since we may be arriving in Vancouver for the first time? I would suggest that you contact UBC Student Housing Berkeley and see what options they might have for you. If I fly to Vancouver via Montreal, would I have to quarantine for 3 days in Montreal, or would it only be at Vancouver? That would be Montreal. For the mandatory 3-night hotel stay, it would be at your first port of entry to Canada. Courses online, we discussed that. Returning student, I had COVID in May. How would that impact my travel? Can I take a small halt, say in the UK, before coming to Vancouver? I'm not vaccinated as I had COVID. Well, being or getting COVID should not impact your travel to Canada as long as you meet all the other requirements. Taking a travel, like a trip to the UK before coming to Canada, all what you need to do is to make sure that you have the right documents. You don't have any symptoms. You're not, of course, this is beyond the 14-day from the first day that COVID or tested positive for COVID. And make sure the PCR test within 72 hours and all of that, if you will have a stop at like a country other than your home country. I submitted my study permit application with my old passport, which expires in March 2021, and now you have a new passport. Your application will not be cancelled. What you can do, scan your new study permit and contact the IRCC visa office via the IRCC web form and request to update your study permit application with a copy of the new passport. I am 18 years old. The self-isolation option presented, okay, study permit, okay, passport, I answered that. If I fly to Vancouver, Montreal, we answered that. Sorry, maybe I missed that. Anyway, I applied for my study permit without my medical exam. Should I wait for RCC to direct me to take it? Well, if you're coming from a country where you're required to complete a medical exam, the advice that we have been given to students is to complete, to submit an upfront medical exam if they can. Of course, you may wait for instructions from RCC if you want. Where do I find my IME for medical examination? Cannot find it. So if you completed an upfront medical exam, you would get an e-medical report, as I mentioned earlier. Or if you applied for a medical exam, if you applied for a study permit and received a request from the visa office, you will get medical exam request that you take to the to the panel physician. So do we need to take the medical exam again if it expires before arrival in Canada? That depends. If you receive a request from the visa office, you must then comply with the requirement. For returning students who already have a valid study permit, I